In our last video, we finished up our to-do app using a local state management system, and we didn't do anything really too major. It's all kind of standard React stuff. In this episode, we're going to take our next step and we're going to start the process of converting from our components managing our state to using Redux to manage our state. The benefit of Redux is it manages it out there somewhere else besides in our actual React application, which allows you to do a bunch of other stuff. You can chain events together, you can set up custom model type things, you can do all sorts of interesting things, and state is only managed in one place, so you don't have to go through a lot of hassle of wondering, wait, where did I do that with the state? Where did I do this with the state? You know, it's all kind of in one location inside of Redux, and this kind of uses a common pattern to be able to mess with state. Let's go ahead and get started. This is going to be the first part in a fairly simple-ish process of converting our state to using Redux. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and open up our index.js file. And we're going to go ahead and start off with doing some imports. We're going to import our normal stuff with our first 3 lines, and then we're going to import Redux, React Redux, and React Router Redux. Redux is a standalone JavaScript framework for dealing with state. It doesn't actually necessarily have anything to do by itself with React. So therefore we need React Redux to wire up Redux and React together. And then finally, since we're doing all of our state stuff inside of Redux, we want to go ahead and wire up our history as well using React Router Redux. And you can actually do an npm install of Redux, React Redux, and React Router Redux, and you're good to go to start using them. For the next couple of videos, I'm going to put all of the code into a single JavaScript file. But if you go out and start learning all of this on another site, and I really highly recommend you do that, you'll learn the more standard way of doing things and putting them in separate folders and locations that's more kind of standards compliant. I'm doing this specifically to show you what code is involved in one single location. In another application that I've been writing on my own time as a fun project, I actually have everything broken out properly like it needs to be, and it makes a lot of sense. We need to be able to make sure that all of the state stuff that Redux does is actually mapped to a component that the rest of our system can use. So for that, we're going to create a main component. It's going to be main equals React create class. It's a normal React component. Then we're going to have our render function like most of our other components have. To start off, we're going to wrap everything in a div and we're going to add an h1. We're going to use a React component of link, and we're just going to fill that out so that it links to our home page and just simply has the name of to-dos so we know where to go to. Then we're going to have a bit of React, and in this case we're going to do react.cloneElement, this.props.children, and this.props. This is kind of boilerplate, this whole component, until you understand better what it does. All it really does is we're taking stuff and we're sending it down to anything that inherits from main. That's kind of the best way to explain it. So any state that Redux manages is kind of pushing down into everything else that's below main and that being inherited. And you'll actually get to see that in practice in the next couple of videos. So with that in mind, just add the main component and move on to the next step. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add map state to props. This is going to be a function, and we're going to pass state into it. This is going to be something that our system is just going to call, and so it needs to know how to handle it. In this case, we're going to say, hey, we want to return a JavaScript object with a key of to-dos, and we're going to map state.todos to this because we're passing in state to this map state to props. This is the first part of actually connecting Redux to React. So what's going to happen is, since we're saying we're going to use to-dos and we're mapping state to our props, in our components we're going to say this.props.todos, and it's going to be the state that we're expecting here, in this case to-dos. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do function map dispatch to props, and we're going to return a function call of bind action creators. And that's going to take a JavaScript object with add to do and remove to dos. Now you're probably like, what's going on? So what we're saying is we're going to take action creators, which I'll explain here in a second, and we're going to add that to our props, much like we did state. So in this case, we have an add to do, which is going to be a function we'll create here in a second, and remove to dos, which again is going to be a function we'll create here in a second. And we're going to add those to props. When you call this.props, you'll have add to do and remove to dos functions available for you to be able to call. Let's go ahead and add our add to do action creator up above, and then we'll explain what it does. So I have function add to do. We're going to pass in to do. This will be the text of our to do. We're simply going to return a JavaScript object with type as a text of add to do and to do. So what is an action creator? An action creator is essentially a message, and it's from a function call. So what Redux does is it gives you these action creators, and then when you call it, it passes it through a bunch of different Redux code. And in that Redux code, you're going to listen, and it's going to pass it in, and it's going to say, hey, is this type add to do? Well, yes, it is add to do. So we're going to go ahead and do something. Is the type not add to do? Okay, then we're just going to ignore it and move on about our business. This is kind of how Redux kind of manages things in our systems. It just throws this action creator and throws that message, that JavaScript object, through the entire system. And if something decides it wants to do something based on this action creator, then it does it. So we're also going to add a function remove to dos, and it's simply going to return a JavaScript object of type of remove to dos. And again, in the next video, you're going to see kind of how this ties together, and you're going to get a better understanding of what's going on. So with that, we have our two action creators. We have our function where we're mapping our state to our props, and we have where we're mapping our action creators to our props as well. So we need our final step of actually connecting it all together. So we're going to create a new constant called app, and we're going to call the connect function. And it's going to take in our map state to props, and it's going to take our map dispatch to props, so that it takes our state and our action creators and puts them on the props. And then it's going to call that and attach it all to the main component we have above. In the next video, we'll show you how to use the main component in our routers so that it actually propagates all of those properties down into the rest of the system. That's it for this video. Definitely stick around for the next video where we kind of conclude a lot of this information so that it all kind of should make a little more sense of how it works. And then finally, after that, we're going to get into, now that we have our application and it's using React and Redux, then we're going to start shoehorning that into our Django project and can start connecting all of the dots of how this works.